My aunt accidentally sent me a video of my family calling me a pathetic failure while I'd been paying their bills for years. She should be grateful, they laughed. I stayed silent until the next payment was due. My aunt sent me the video at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. The message above it said, "Wrong chat, sorry." She sent the retraction 11 seconds after the video. I know because I checked the timestamp later. The way you check things when you are trying to understand the exact shape of what just happened to you. 11 seconds, not enough time to unsend, not enough time to stop me from pressing play. I watched it once. Then I sat very still for a moment. Then I watched it again. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up 6 years of bank statements. I want to tell you that I cried first, or that my hands shook, or that I did something that would make you feel better about what a person does when they discover the people they have been quietly holding up have been laughing at them behind their backs. But I am a bookkeeper. I have been a bookkeeper my whole adult life. And what a bookkeeper does when confronted with information that changes the picture is open the ledger. So that's what I did. My name is Audrey Sims. I am 34 years old and I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the same mid-size Ohio city where I grew up, where my mother still lives in the house on Clement Street, where my brother Wade still parks his truck in the driveway of his duplex, where my sister Megan still sends her kids to the school 3 blocks from her apartment. I am a senior bookkeeper at Callaway Financial Services, a regional accounting firm, 11 employees, mostly small business clients. I have worked there for 9 years. I am precise, I am reliable, and I am the person the partners call when a client's numbers don't reconcile and nobody else can find the discrepancy. I am good at finding discrepancies. I am apparently less good at finding them in my own life. My father, Dennis Sims, died 6 years ago. Heart attack. Fast, at 61. The kind of death that arrives before anyone has prepared for what comes after. Dad had been the financial center of our family in the way of men who handle money without discussing it. Not because he was secretive, but because it had simply always been his domain, and the rest of the family had organized themselves around that fact without examining it. When he died, the examination arrived all at once. The house on Clement Street had a mortgage with 14 years remaining. My mother, Lorraine, was 53 and had worked part-time as a school receptionist for 20 years, which meant her income was real but insufficient. The bank, presented with her income documentation alone, was not interested in assuming the risk. Wade was 31 and had the credit history of someone who had made a series of confident decisions that hadn't worked out. He drove a 2019 Ford F-250 he was already behind on. Megan was 29 and had 2 kids under 5, and a lease she'd been supplementing with Dad's quiet assistance, which had now stopped because Dad was gone. And I was 28 and had a stable job and a good credit score, and the specific combination of financial competence and family loyalty that meant I understood exactly what was needed, and did not know yet that understanding and doing are not the same thing as being valued. I went to the bank with my mother. I put my name on the mortgage. I became, legally and financially, the person responsible for the house on Clement Street. I told myself it was temporary, until Mom got on her feet. That's what you tell yourself when you do something permanent. The first year I told myself it was grief. We were all grieving. The family needed time to stabilize. The payments, the mortgage, which I covered fully because Mom's income barely managed utilities and groceries. The truck note I started making because Wade said he'd miss his shift at the warehouse if the F-250 got repossessed. The $800 I sent Megan on the first of every month because her rent was $100 and her take-home was $2,300 and 2 children are expensive. Those were temporary measures. Bridge money. They would end. They didn't end. By the second year, they had become infrastructure, not something anyone thought about, the way nobody thinks about the pipes in their walls until the water stops. The first of every month I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and I clicked and transferred and confirmed, and the money moved from my accounts to theirs, and nobody called to say thank you because it had stopped feeling like a gift and started feeling like weather. Something that happened. Something reliable. I missed my college roommate's wedding in Nashville because the first of the month was a Monday, and I had 3 client month-end closes due that week, and I could not afford, financially or professionally, to be unavailable. I sent a gift. I sent apologies. I told myself next time. There wasn't a next time for a few years. I had one serious relationship in this period. A man named Patrick, a project manager, patient and kind, who after 14 months told me gently that he felt like he was dating someone who was always only partially present. He was right. He was also right that he couldn't change it. We ended things without drama. I went home and did the first of the month transfers and told myself I was fine. I was not fine. But a feeling isn't a plan, and I had always been better at plans. The red flags arrived in the way they always do. Small, individually explainable, collectively damning. Wade bought a boat. Not an extravagant boat. A used aluminum fishing boat with a 40-horsepower motor, maybe $4,000 used. He sent me a photo of himself in it, on the lake, grinning. Finally, the caption said. I looked at the photo and thought about the truck note I was still paying and set my phone face down. Megan redecorated her apartment. New couch, new curtains, a kitchen table she said she'd found on Facebook Marketplace that turned out to be new, based on the price tag visible in one of the photos she posted. I stared at that price tag for a long time. My mother told her book club that she'd been lucky after Dennis died to have family support. This made it back to me through my cousin Diane, who mentioned it at a 4th of July gathering with a warmth that she clearly thought I would share. I smiled and went to get a drink. Lucky. Support. As if the mortgage were a naturally occurring phenomenon. I had a conversation with my mother in the fall of the 3rd year, on the phone, a Sunday night. I said carefully that I'd been thinking about the house situation and wondering whether it might be time to look at refinancing in her name now that some time had passed. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Audrey, this really isn't the time to be making things difficult. I've got the grandkids this week and I'm exhausted. interested. I said, okay. I transferred the mortgage payment on the 1st. The 4th year, Wade called me to tell me he'd been laid off. He said it with the particular ease of someone who has a safety net and knows it, and the safety net was me. He needed 3 months, he said, maybe 4. He was back at work in 6 weeks. He did not call to tell me that. I found out from Megan. The truck payments from my account continued for 4 more months before I noticed and asked. He said he'd figured I knew. I said that I would need to start tapering down. He said that would be really tough right now. I said okay. I transferred the payment on the 1st. I do not know exactly why I kept doing it. I have spent a significant amount of time in the past year thinking about this with my therapist, Dr. Carolyn Webb, 8 years in practice, a specialty in family systems, and what she calls enmeshment, which is a clinical word for the way families can organize themselves around one person's sacrifice without ever naming it or acknowledging it or asking if that person consented. Dr. Webb says that people in my position often continue because stopping feels like an act of aggression, like the money is the only proof of belonging. Like if you stop paying, you will discover what was true all along, that the belonging was always conditional. I think she's right. I think I paid for 6 years because I was afraid of what I would find out if I stopped. The video answered that question for me. My family had a dinner the 3rd Saturday of October. I wasn't there. I was finishing a month-end close for a restaurant client who had changed accounting software mid-year and created the kind of reconciliation disaster that requires a weekend to untangle. I'd texted my mother at 4 p.m. to say I couldn't make it. She'd responded with a thumbs up. My Aunt Patrice, my dad's sister, had been there. Patrice was warm and well-meaning and operated her phone with the confidence of someone who had not fully made peace with group messaging. She meant to send the video to her own daughter. She sent it to me. The video was 3 minutes and 40 seconds long, shot on a phone, slightly sideways, the way candid table videos always are. The fellowship of an easy family dinner. Dishes being passed, wine being poured, the particular looseness of people who are comfortable together. Wade stood up with his glass. He had the look of a man about to deliver something he'd been workshopping. Here's to Audrey, he said, and the table was already smiling, already in on something. 34, no husband, no kids, just her little numbers. He paused for effect. A pathetic failure who's real good at adding up everyone else's money. My sister laughed into her wine. My cousin Derek laughed. One of Megan's kids asked what was funny, and Megan shushed him, still smiling. My mother, Lorraine Sims, 60 years old, sitting at the head of her table in her house with her mortgage, raised one hand with the air of a woman being magnanimous. Oh, leave her alone, she said. She should be grateful. At least the money gives her something to feel useful about. The table opened up. Real laughter. The comfortable kind. The kind that only happens when nobody believes the person being discussed is ever going to hear it. I paused the video on my mother's face, mouth still open around the word grateful. I looked at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I had never run the full total. Not once in 6 years. I told myself it was because the individual amounts were manageable and the aggregate didn't matter. The truth is, I was afraid of what the number would look like, and I had not yet been ready to be afraid. That night, I was ready. Statement by statement. 6 years of transactions. Every mortgage payment, every truck note, every insurance installment, every month of Megan's rent, the $1,200 I'd sent my mother in August of the 3rd year for a furnace replacement, the $800 I'd covered when Wade's transmission went, the recurring transfers that had become so automatic I sometimes forgot to track them because tracking them felt too much like accounting for something I'd decided not to examine. It took me 4 hours. The number at the bottom of the screen was $214,000 and change. $214,000. I sat with that number for a long time. I didn't cry about the money, not exactly. Numbers don't hurt me the way they hurt other people. What got me, what found the place underneath the professional composure and the practiced management of my own feelings, was the time column. Every transaction had a date, and the dates told a different story than the dollar amounts did. Friday nights. Saturday mornings. The weekend in March 4 years ago when I'd been going to drive to Columbus to see an exhibit at the art museum and had stayed home instead because Megan's car wouldn't start and she needed the $340 for a rental. And I had recalculated my weekend budget and decided Columbus could wait. Columbus had waited every year since. I cried for 4 minutes. I know because I looked at the clock when I started and when I stopped. Then I wiped my face and got back to the spreadsheet because a feeling isn't a plan, and I had a plan to build. Here is the thing nobody in my family had ever thought to do. In 6 years, not once. Check the deed to the house on Clement Street. It had not occurred to them. I understand this looking back with more clarity than resentment. When you grow up in a house and your parents own it, and then your parent dies and things get sorted out in the background, and the house remains and your mother continues to live there, you do not think about the machinery by which that house continues to be your mother's house. You think mom's house, because it has always been mom's house. It had not been mom's house for 6 years. My name was on the deed. My name was on the mortgage. Every page that mattered to First Calder Savings and Loan had my signature on it, notarized by a bank officer named Patricia Gould, who had walked me through the paperwork with the brisk efficiency of someone who did 3 of these a week and the quiet care of someone who could tell I was doing something significant. My family had been living in my house for 6 years, not theoretically, legally. I pulled up the deed from my files at midnight. I had a copy, always. I am a bookkeeper. I keep copies of everything. In a folder on my hard drive labeled Property Clement Saint. I opened it and looked at my name at the top and thought about my mother saying she should be grateful at a dinner table in a house that was mine. Then I called my accountant. Marcus Chen had been my personal accountant for 5 years, CPA, specializing in personal finance and small property matters, meticulous in a way that complemented rather than duplicated my own precision. I called him at 8 a.m. the next morning, which was a Wednesday, and I told him what I needed. A deed transfer, he said when I'd finished. Back into her name. Clean. With the mortgage she'll need to assume. Can she qualify? I don't know. That's her problem. A pause. Marcus was not a man who paused often. Audrey, I know. You've thought about this. I ran the numbers last night. Another pause. Okay, he said. I'll call Thomas Reedy. He handled the original transfer. Thomas Reedy was the real estate attorney who had overseen the original mortgage transaction 6 years ago. 28 years in property law, an office above a tax preparation service on Main Street, the kind of attorney who is present at the significant financial moments of ordinary people's lives and treats those moments with appropriate gravity. He remembered the transaction. He remembered me. You're sure? He said on the phone Thursday morning. I'm sure. She'll need to qualify independently. The bank may not. I understand, I said. That's the point. He was quiet for a moment. I'll have the paperwork ready Monday, he said. My mother had been planning her 60th birthday party for 3 months. The First Methodist Fellowship Hall, which seated 120 and had hosted every significant event in our family's life, my parents' anniversary parties, my grandmother's funeral reception, Wade's daughter's christening, had been booked since August. My mother had told everyone in her orbit, which was considerable, that Audrey was handling the coordination, which I was, because I always did. She had also told people, I learned from Diane, that Audrey would say a few words. The grateful daughter. The one who took care of everything. She had been telling that story for years. I'm so lucky. The kids have been wonderful. Audrey especially. In the version of events where my contribution was a warm family fact, rather than a financial transaction she had never acknowledged. She handed me the microphone in front of 107 people and nodded, the way you nod at someone who is about to perform their assigned role. I had 4 envelopes under my arm, heavy manila, my handwriting on each one, neat and unhurried. I had made them on Saturday, at my kitchen table, with the same attention I brought to client deliverables, because that's what they were, in a sense. Deliverables, a complete accounting, the truth in columns. My mother's envelope contained the deed transfer paperwork, prepared and signed by Thomas Reedy, transferring the house on Clement Street back to Lorraine Ann Sims, along with a cover letter, 1 page, explaining that the mortgage would need to be assumed in her name and that First Calder Savings and Loan would require her to qualify independently. The bank's contact information was at the bottom. I had paperclipped a business card for Patricia Gould, who had been patient with me once and who I trusted to be professional now. Wade's envelope contained a spreadsheet, 6 years of truck payments, insurance installments, the transmission, miscellaneous, dates, amounts, running total, no editorializing, no adjectives, just the truth in rows. Megan's envelope was the same, 4 years of rent assistance, itemized, dated, totaled. The 4th envelope, addressed to myself, which I did not intend to give to anyone, which I had made as an act of completion, contained 1 page. A schedule of everything stopping on November 1st. The mortgage, the truck note, Megan's monthly transfer, every recurring item listed with the word final in the date column. I had looked at that page for a long time before I sealed it. It was the most clarifying document I had ever produced. The room went quiet when I stood up. 107 people who had come to eat sheet cake and watch Lorraine Sims be celebrated. I walked to my mother first. Mom, I said, this is for you. I held out her envelope. She took it with the slight confusion of someone who expected a toast and received paperwork. It's the deed to the house on Clement Street, I said. The microphone carried it clearly. The house has been in my name for 6 years. Tonight, I'm signing it back to you. It's yours, along with the mortgage I've been carrying every month since Dad died. First Calder opens Monday. Patricia Gould is the contact. She's expecting you. A sound moved through the room. Not a word. A collective breath. I set Wade's envelope on the table in front of him. Megan's in front of Megan. Inside each of these is a complete record, I said to the room, because the room was watching now. All 107 people, and I saw no reason to lower my voice. Every transfer, every payment, 6 years, to the penny. I didn't add anything. I didn't round up. I just wrote down what's true. Wade ripped his open. The color left his face in a specific sequence. First the flush of anticipation, then the white of understanding, then something that might have been the beginning of shame. My mother came out of her chair so fast it tipped and scraped back against the floor. How dare you? She was not using her indoor voice. She was using the voice she used when she wanted a room to understand she had been wronged. How dare you do this at my own party, in front of everybody? You've always been like this. You've always been jealous and dramatic and desperate for attention, and I have had it. She kept going. I waited. I have learned in 9 years of client management that the most effective thing you can do when someone is performing anger at you is to simply wait. The performance has a natural duration. It runs until it runs out of fuel, and the fuel is your reaction. And if you don't provide the reaction, the fire goes out. My mother ran for about 45 seconds. Then she stopped, breathing hard, color high in her face. The room was completely silent. I waited 1 more beat. Then I said quietly enough that the entire room had to stay silent to hear it. I'm not asking for thanks. I'm not asking for an apology. I looked at my mother. I'm just done paying to be your punchline. From the back of the room, from a man I would later identify as Howard Gillis, who had been my father's friend for 30 years and had known our family since before I was born, a voice said, clearly and without particular volume, Lord, the pathetic one was holding the whole thing up. I buttoned my coat. The payments stop on the 1st, I said. To the room, the way you report the weather. Factual, unremarkable. The house is yours now, Mom. I hope it's everything you've been telling everyone it was. Then I walked out of the First Methodist Fellowship Hall, past a table of untouched sheet cake, through the double doors and into the parking lot where my car was waiting. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, My hands were completely steady. I will tell you what happened after, because I think you deserve the full account. My mother called First Calder Savings and Loan on Monday morning. I know because Patricia Gould, who has 17 years in residential mortgage services and the particular competence of someone who has guided many difficult conversations to their necessary conclusions, called me Monday afternoon as a professional courtesy to confirm that Lorraine Sims had made contact and that the qualification process was underway. She'll need a cosigner, Patricia said, not unkindly. I know, I said. Will you? No, I said. A pause. Understood, said Patricia. Megan called me Tuesday. She was crying, which I had expected, and she said she didn't understand, which I had also expected, and then she said something I had not expected. I should have asked. I always should have asked, and I never did, and I think I knew, and I didn't want to know. We talked for an hour. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. I am not going to tell you that Megan and I are fixed. Families that have organized themselves around one person's sacrifice for 6 years are not fixed in a single phone call. But we are talking, which is more than we were doing before. Wade did not call. My mother called 3 times in the first 2 weeks, each call a different variation on the theme of how I had humiliated her. The 4th time she called in the 3rd week, she said, I don't know why you would do this to me. And I said, I know. And she was quiet for a moment. And then she said very quietly, I should have said thank you. I said that she should have. Then there was a long silence and she said she'd have to figure out the house situation. And I said I knew she would. We hung up. She found a cosigner. My cousin Derek, who feels, I think, a specific kind of guilt about that dinner table. The mortgage is in process. The house will remain the house on Clement Street. I see Dr. Webb every other Thursday. We are working on what she calls the exit from the enmeshment. Not the financial exit, which was clean and complete, but the internal one, the slower dismantling of the belief that my value to my family was transactional, that love was a ledger, that I had been paying a debt that was never mine. It is slower work than a spreadsheet, but I am a patient person. Marcus Chen reviewed my finances in November and told me that with the payments stopped and the mortgage off my obligation, my disposable income had increased by approximately $3,100 a month. He said it the way accountants say things, matter-of-factly, with a small spreadsheet. I looked at the number for a long time. Then I booked a flight to Columbus. The art museum was still there. The exhibit I'd missed had closed 4 years ago, but there was a new one, and November was a good time to go, and I had never been, and it was only 2 hours, and there was nothing on the 1st of the month that required me to be home. I went on a Saturday. I stayed until they closed. I ate dinner alone at a restaurant near the museum where I ordered what I wanted without calculating anything. I drove home in the dark with the radio on. It was the best day I'd had in years.